Looking live at Cygnus as it approaches the 30-meter hold point. Now sitting about 40 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, once Cygnus arrives to the 30-meter hold point, mission control teams in Dulles will perform state of health checks on the Cygnus vehicle. This 30-meter hold point is basically the stopping point to verify everything is in the green and looks good before Cygnus makes its final approach to the International Space Station for capture this morning. Cygnus is still approaching that 30-meter hold point, now sitting about 34 meters away from the station.
Station Houston on 2 for Cygnus. Confirm 30-meter hold and set up for capture per step 6 in 1.102.
Copy. Step 6 is in work.
You just heard from Capcom Steven Zenter here in Mission Control Houston that Cygnus has arrived to the 30-meter hold point successfully. Again, teams are working now and running a series of checks to make sure everything looks good on the vehicle before its final approach to the station. The space station and Cygnus are currently traveling over South America.
29.
Copy 30.29.
Stepping into step 3 of 1.110.
As the series of checks continue, at this 30-meter hold point, there will also be a go, no go from the flight controllers, making sure everything on their end checks out before the final approach to the station. Again, this 30-meter hold is a very important milestone because the next one will be the arrival of Cygnus at the capture point about 10 to 12 meters from the International Space Station. And you can see the robotic arm at the bottom of your screen now. That robotic arm is in position and ready to reach out to capture the 7,500 pounds of cargo traveling today. Cygnus is still at that 30-meter hold point, waiting to depart. You'll hear that from Capcom's Steven Zenter here in Mission Control Houston.
Houston station on 2 for Cygnus.
Houston's here.
Crew is ready for Cygnus approach to capture point.
We copy. Station Houston on 2. Cygnus is ready to proceed to the capture point. Expect approach to resume shortly.
Station copies.
That was Capcom Steven Zenter here in Mission Control Houston, confirming Cygnus is ready to depart from that 30-meter hold point. Still in a 30-meter hold position, but we should be getting confirmation soon. Once it departs, again, this is the last milestone before Cygnus arrives at the capture point, 10 to 12 meters away from the International Space Station.
Station Houston on 2. Cygnus has resumed approach to the capture point. Monitor approach within 30 meters per step 7 in 1.102. You are primed to issue retreat if pry range is less than 6 meters.
Copy, step 7.
Cygnus is now under 30 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, this is the final approach as Cygnus heads into the capture point. Once Cygnus is captured, there are several more steps to make sure Cygnus is ready to be berthed to the International Space Station, which will happen later this morning. At the controls of the Canadarm2 robotic arm this morning is NASA astronaut Drew Morgan, backed up by NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. Cygnus is now 22 meters and closing, looking for that capture point about 10 to 12 meters from where the Canadarm is now. Cygnus is now under 20 meters from the International Space Station. You can see Cygnus coming into view at the top of your screen, now 18 meters away and closing. The International Space Station and Cygnus now flying 262 statute miles above the Atlantic Ocean. Getting this view now from a camera at the end of the space station's robotic arm. Cygnus now 15 meters away from the International Space Station. Starting to see some different components of Cygnus as it comes into view. The top left and right of your screen are those ultraflex solar arrays on Cygnus. And that circle toward the bottom of Cygnus is where the Canadarm2 will be moving in today. Cygnus now 13 meters from the International Space Station.
Station Houston on 2. Confirm capture point hold per step 8 in 1.102.
Copy. Step 8.
That was confirmation Cygnus is holding at the capture point, now just over 12 meters away from the International Space Station. Now that Cygnus has arrived at the capture point, teams will do a final go, no-go, which will be the final steps that all systems are a go and the crew can take controls of the Canadarm2 robotic arm. Again, at the controls of the robotic arm today are NASA astronauts Drew Morgan, backed up by Jessica Meir. Cygnus is still holding steady at the capture point, just over 12 meters from the International Space Station, as teams run a go, no-go poll to ensure all systems are a go for capture this morning.
Houston Station on 2 for Cygnus. Capture conditions are confirmed and the crew is ready for Cygnus capture.
Houston copies. Stand by for capture.
Houston, station on 2 for Cygnus, standing by for your go and step 4.1.
Station Houston on 2, your go for Cygnus capture sequence, step 4 in 1.110, Cygnus capture. Begin monitoring the backaway cue card.
Station copies.
That was Capcom's Steven Zenter confirming Cygnus is a go for capture. All of the milestones this morning are complete, now heading into our last step of the capture itself. In just a few more minutes, we should start to see the robotic arm moving in closer to Cygnus for an on-time capture today. Once the Canadarm2 starts moving, there will be a series of checks before capture, some readouts of the distance from the arm to the capture position over the pin. Then the snares will be closed and we'll wait for confirmation of capture. Cygnus is now in free drift, configured for capture. The International Space Station and Cygnus are now flying 266 statute miles above Moscow. And we have confirmation the arm is in motion. Again, this is the final stretch for capture of the Cygnus resupply cargo craft this morning. Cygnus is now 2.5 meters away. Two meters away. $1.5 meters. $1 meter away from capture. Now over the pin. And we have confirmed capture at 3:05 a.m. Central, 4:05 a.m. Eastern, as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 265 statute miles above southeastern Russia.
Houston Station on 2, Cygnus capture complete. Go for Cygnus post-capture reconfiguration.
Houston copies. Congratulations on a beautiful capture. We're excited to see the SS Robert H. Lawrence Jr. at the ISS. and we are looking forward to the many science investigations that the Cygnus spacecraft carries as the mission honors the legacy of Major Lawrence.
Thanks, Stephen, and congratulations to the entire NASA and Northrop Grumman teams on another successful vehicle capture. The Cygnus NG-13 vehicle, as Stephen mentioned, is named in honor of U.S. Air Force Major Robert H. Lawrence, Jr., and as the first African-American to be selected as an astronaut by a national space program, Robert defined possible against the odds when he was selected for the U.S. Air Force's Manned Orbital Laboratory Project in 1967. Tragically, Major Lawrence died in an aircraft training accident that same year. But while Robert never launched into Earth orbit, he remains a valuable symbol of progress and inclusion in human spaceflight, and it's our honor to welcome the SS Robert H. Lawrence, Jr. aboard the ISS.
And some words from Capcom's Steven Zenter and Drew Morgan aboard the International Space Station, who successfully captured the Cygnus vehicle today at 3:05 a.m. Central, 4:05 a.m. Eastern, as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 265 statute miles above southeastern Russia. Cygnus began its journey to the International Space Station after lifting off from the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia on top of an Antares 250 Plus rocket on Saturday, February 15th at 2:21 p.m. Central Time. Cygnus made a 3-day journey to be captured by NASA astronaut Drew Morgan at the controls of the Canadarm2 robotic arm alongside NASA astronaut Jessica Meir at 3:05 a.m. Central Time today, as the International Space Station and Cygnus were flying 265 statute miles over southeastern Russia. The Cygnus spacecraft for this space station resupply mission was dedicated to U.S. Air Force Major Robert Lawrence, who was the first African-American astronaut selected by any program specifically chosen for the Air Force's Manned Orbital Laboratory Program in June of 1967. We'll be back on air here shortly at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern for berthing coverage, where the Robert Lawrence will be installed to the International Space Station before that 7,500 pounds of cargo can be unloaded. And that'll wrap up our coverage for a successful capture this morning. This is Mission Control Houston.